Four brothers ordered mail-order brides, but got four sisters running from a deadly secret. Four lonely brothers in 1885 Montana ordered mail-order brides to save their failing ranch. But when the stagecoach arrived, they discovered all four women were sisters fleeing a dark secret that could destroy them all. What happened next would become the most shocking love story the Wild West had ever seen. If you want to witness how these eight strangers turned a desperate gamble into an extraordinary legacy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories from the American frontier. The night before Eleanor Vance boarded the train that would carry her and her sisters 2,000 miles from Boston, she stood in the garden of their soon-to-be-lost townhouse and burned her wedding invitation. The ivory cardstock embossed with gold lettering, announcing her betrothal to Mr. Thaddeus Sterling, curled and blackened in the flame of her candle. She watched it turn to ash, each glowing ember, a small rebellion against the life that had been chosen for her. "You shouldn't be doing that out here," Isabel whispered from the doorway, her younger sister's fierce eyes scanning the darkness. "If he has men watching, let them watch," Eleanor said, though her voice trembled. The ring Sterling had given her, the one she'd hidden beneath her gloves for weeks, caught the moonlight and as she pulled it off. She couldn't bring herself to burn it. They would need every penny for their escape. "Tomorrow we disappear. Tomorrow we become different women entirely." Neither sister spoke of the advertisement they'd answered of the four brothers in Montana seeking wives. It had been a desperate plan, born of a moment when all other doors had closed. Their father imprisoned, their fortune stolen, and Sterling's grip tightening like a noose. What choice did they have but to run toward strangers who at least promised honest work and a chance at dignity? Eleanor didn't know then that one of those strangers, a man named Bo Dalton, was at that very moment standing over his own father's grave in Montana, making a very different kind of promise. The dust of Promise Creek, Montana rose like a prayer, or perhaps a warning as the stagecoach rounded the final bend. It was September 1885, and the afternoon sun turned everything the color of dried blood and dreams deferred. The Dalton brothers stood on the platform like four pillars of masculine uncertainty, each wrestling with the magnitude of what they'd done. Bo Dalton, 30 years old and carved from equal parts responsibility and regret, kept his eyes fixed on the horizon. His calloused fingers worried the brim of his hat, the same nervous gesture his father had made the day before he died. That had been 6 months ago. A land dispute turned violent, a single gunshot that had left Bo with three younger brothers to raise in a ranch bleeding money like a gut-shot steer. The mail-order bride scheme hadn't even been his idea, not really. It had been Finn's joke over whiskey one night, Owen's practical consideration over the ledgers, and Reese's enthusiastic endorsement that had somehow crystallized into action. Three of them had written letters. Bo hadn't. He was only here for support, to help his brothers collect their awkward prizes and begin their awkward new lives. "You reckon they'll be pretty?" Reese asked, his 20-year-old face bright with an optimism that the territory hadn't yet learned to crush. "You reckon they'll be breathing?" Finn countered, his gambler's grin not quite hiding his nervousness. "That'd be enough for me." Owen, ever the philosopher, adjusted his spectacles. "Aristotle wrote that marriage is a single soul inhabiting two bodies, though I suspect he never tried it through a mail-order catalog." Bo said nothing. His mind was elsewhere, remembering his father's last words: "Trust careful, son, trust wrong, and it'll kill everything you love." He'd been talking about the men who'd shot him over water rights, but the words had burrowed deep into Bo's bones. Now here he stood, about to welcome complete strangers into their home. The coach thundered to a stop, horses snorting and stamping their displeasure. Gus, the driver, squinted down at them with tobacco-stained amusement. "Got your delivery boys, all four of them pretty as pictures and twice as mysterious." "Four." Bo's chest tightened. There should only be three. His letter to Mrs. Peterson, a widow from Chicago, remained unsent on his desk. He'd rewritten it a dozen times, but could never bring himself to mail it. How did you tell a stranger you needed her to save your family when you couldn't even save your father? The coach door opened, and time seemed to slow. First came Jenny, barely 19, with the kind of innocent beauty that made hard men remember softer days. Her eyes were huge, taking in the dusty street with a mixture of wonder and barely controlled terror. Reese actually gasped, then tried to cover it with a cough. Next descended Rosalind, moving like water, all grace despite the rough wooden step. She clutched a leather portfolio against her chest, as if it contained her very soul, which in a way it did. Her eyes found Owen, immediately recognizing a fellow seeker of beauty in ugly places. Then Isabel emerged, and the air itself seemed to crackle. She didn't step down so much as conquer the space, her chin high and her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. She looked at the four brothers like a general surveying a battlefield, and her eyes lingered on Finn with something between disdain and interest. But it was the fourth woman who changed everything. Eleanor stepped from the coach with the kind of dignity that made princes of paupers and fools of wise men. She was perhaps 25, with dark hair twisted into a practical bun and eyes that had seen too much. She wore black, not quite morning clothes, but close enough. And when her gaze found Beau's, something electric passed between them. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. Two eldest children who'd been carrying the world too long. "Gentlemen," Eleanor said, her Boston accent softening the word, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "That's what I was thinking," Beau said, finding his voice. "No," Eleanor continued, and now her sisters had arranged themselves beside her, a united front against the world. "The misunderstanding is yours. The Matrimonial Times listed 4 brothers seeking wives. We are 4 sisters seeking survival." It seemed providential. The wind picked up, sending dust devils dancing between them. Beau saw it then, the way Jenny leaned slightly toward Rosalind, and for support, how Isabel's hand hovered near Eleanor's elbow, ready to steady or defend. These weren't 4 women who happened to be related. This was a family that had been forged in some terrible crucible and had emerged inseparable. "Your sisters," Beau stated rather than asked. "The Vance sisters," Eleanor confirmed. "I'm Eleanor. These are Isabel, Rosalind, and Genevieve." Each nodded as she was named. "You must be Beau, Finn, Owen, and Reese Dalton." "How did you—" "Your letters were quite descriptive," Isabel interrupted, a slight smirk playing at her lips. "Finn, you mentioned your devilish charm at least 3 times. We figured you'd be the one with the insufferable grin." Finn barked a laugh, delighted. "And you must be the one who listed suffering no fools as your primary virtue." "Sisters," Owen murmured, his mind already calculating the complications. "All 4 of you. Together." "Together," Eleanor confirmed, and there was steel in that word. "That's the only condition. We stay together or we go together." Beau felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His father would have sent them away. His father would have seen the complication, the danger, the impossibility of it all. But his father was dead killed by his inability to trust when it mattered. "Gus," Beau called up to the driver, his decision made. "Help us with their trunks." Beau, Finn's voice carried a question. "The ranch is 2 hours out," Beau said, meeting Eleanor's eyes. "You look tired. You can rest there tonight and we'll figure this out." As they loaded the meager belongings onto the wagon, Beau couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor was hiding something beneath that composed exterior. The way she kept touching her left ring finger, now bare, but bearing the slight indentation of recently removed jewelry. The way her sisters looked to her, not just for guidance, but for protection. The ride to the ranch was quiet, punctuated only by Reese's attempts at conversation with Jenny and Finn's periodic chuckles at Isabel's tart responses to his overtures. But Beau was aware of Eleanor beside him on the driver's bench, her spine straight, despite her obvious exhaustion. "Your father," she said suddenly, quietly nodding toward the black band on his arm. "Recent 6 months. Yours 8 months," she paused. "Though in truth, we lost him long before he died." Beau wanted to ask more, but something in her tone warned him off. Instead, they rode in a silence that was almost companionable, 2 orphaned eldest children carrying their families toward an uncertain future. The Dalton Ranch materialized out of the landscape like a stubborn argument with nature. The main house, built by Beau's father with his own hands, stood solid but weary. The outbuildings leaned at various angles of exhaustion. Everything needed paint repair or faith. "It's not much," Beau began, suddenly seeing it through their eyes. "It's standing," Eleanor said simply. "That's more than we had in Boston." As they climbed down from the wagon, Jenny swayed suddenly, her face going pale. Reese caught her elbow, steadying her with surprising gentleness. "Jenny," Rosalind was there, instantly feeling her sister's forehead. "She's burning up. The journey, the stress, she's been fighting this for days." "There's a bed inside," Beau said, taking charge. "Owen, ride for Doc Barton." "No," Eleanor said sharply, then softened. "I mean, not yet. We've managed her fevers before. We just need rest, clean water, and willow bark tea, please." Beau studied her, noting the fear that flashed across her face at the mention of the doctor. Town meant questions. Questions meant attention. And attention, he was beginning to understand, was something the Vance sisters could not afford. That first night, as Jenny tossed in fever dreams, and her sisters took turns cooling her forehead, Bo found himself standing in the doorway of his father's room, now given to the sisters, watching Eleanor's tireless ministrations. "She'll be fine," Eleanor said without looking up. "Jenny's stronger than she looks. We all are. What are you running from?" The question escaped before he could stop it. Eleanor's hand stilled on the washcloth. In the lamplight, he could see the weight she carried etched in the premature lines around her eyes. "The same thing you are, Mr. Dalton, the past." She looked up at him then, and in her eyes he saw a mirror of his own grief, his own fear, his own desperate hope, that somehow impossibly tomorrow might be better than today. "I should go," he said, but didn't move. "Yes," she agreed, but her eyes asked him to stay. In the next room, Jenny's fever whispered secrets. "Papa," she moaned. "Papa's waiting. He's still waiting for us. The walls are too high." Eleanor's face went white. She rushed to her sister's side, murmuring soothing nonsense to quiet her revelations. But Bo had heard enough to know that whatever secret the Vance sisters carried, it was bigger than a failed business or a broken engagement. Later, unable to sleep, Bo walked out to his father's grave. It was a simple marker on a hill overlooking the ranch, positioned where it caught the first light of dawn. He'd come here every night since the burial, trying to make sense of a world that could take a good man for no good reason. "I don't know what I am doing, Pa," he whispered to the stone. "4 women, 4 sisters, and secrets that could probably get us all killed. You'd say I was 10 kinds of fool." The wind through the grass sounded almost like laughter. His father had always said Bo was too careful, too slow to trust. "You can't build nothing with a closed fist, son," he'd said once. "Sometimes you gotta open your hand and see what lands in it." A sound made him turn. Eleanor stood a few feet away, wrapped in a shawl, her face ethereal in the moonlight. "I'm sorry," she said. "I couldn't sleep. I saw you walking." "Your sister. The fever's broken. She's sleeping peacefully now." Eleanor moved closer to the grave, reading the marker. "William Dalton, beloved father, taken too soon." "He was murdered," Bo said, the words bitter. "Shot over water rights by men who thought killing was easier than negotiating." Eleanor's intake of breath was sharp. "I'm sorry." "Why are you really here, Miss Vance?" Bo asked, turning to face her fully. The truth this time. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment, seeming to weigh his trustworthiness against her desperation. Then so quietly he had to lean in to hear she said, "My father died in prison, Mr. Dalton. Framed for crimes he didn't commit by a man who wanted to own us the way he owned everything else he touched. We ran because the alternative was becoming his property one way or another. This man have a name. Thaddeus Sterling. He was my father's business partner. He's wealthy, connected, and patient as a spider. He'll come looking eventually." Bo absorbed this information, his mind already calculating the danger she'd brought to his door. He should be angry. He should send them away at first light. Instead, he found himself saying, "Let him come. This ranch has stood against worse than one soft city man." Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "You don't know him. I don't need to. I know you ran 2,000 miles to escape him. That tells me enough." He paused, then added, "My father died because I wasn't here when trouble came calling. I was in town playing cards, trusting that everything would be fine. I won't make that mistake again." They stood in silence, 2 damaged souls finding an unexpected moment of understanding. The moon cast their shadows long across the grave, and for a moment it looked like they were already bound together, their dark shapes inseparable on the ground. "Your sisters," Bo finally said, "they don't know you were engaged to him, do they?" Eleanor's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "How did you—" "The ring indentation on your finger. The way you flinch when you talk about him. The fact that you're in mourning colors but not quite." Bo shrugged. "I may be a simple rancher, Miss Vance, but I'm not blind." "You can't tell them," Eleanor whispered urgently. "Especially not Isabel. She would never forgive me. She thinks I sacrificed everything for them, but the truth is I almost sacrificed them for the promise of security. I almost married him to save Father's business before I understood what he really was." "Your secret's safe," Bo promised. "But secrets have a way of coming out, especially when they're carried by fever dreams and frightened hearts." Eleanor wrapped her shawl tighter. "Then I'll have to make sure they have no reason to be frightened, won't I?" As she walked back toward the house, Bo called after her, "Miss Vance." She turned, waiting. "My letter to the agency. I never sent it. You weren't supposed to be here. There's no arrangement between us." Even in the moonlight, he could see her smile, sad and knowing. "Aren't we all where we're not supposed to be? Mr. Dalton, isn't that what the frontier is for?" She left him there with his father's ghost and his growing certainty that Eleanor Vance was going to change everything, whether he was ready or not. Inside the house, unknown to either of them, Rosalind sat sketching by candlelight. But she wasn't drawing the landscape or the ranch. She was carefully copying the coded messages from their mother's quilt, the one she'd told no one about yet, not even Eleanor. The quilt that contained not just evidence of Sterling's crimes, but something else, something that would change everything if it were true. In neat, precise letters, she transcribed her mother's hidden message. Your father lives. The prison death was staged. Find the morning star. The first dawn at the Dalton Ranch broke like a promise, painting the mountains purple and gold. 4 brothers and 4 sisters faced their first full day together, unaware that they had already begun weaving their lives together in ways that would prove impossible to untangle. But 300 miles away, in a comfortable train car heading west, Thaddeus Sterling held a telegram that had just arrived. Found them, it read. Dalton Ranch, Promise Creek, Montana. Await instructions. Sterling smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. He touched the ring in his pocket. Eleanor's ring, the one she'd sold to a pawnbroker in Denver, not knowing he had men watching every shop between Boston and California. Run all you want, my dear, he murmured to the window. Every step you take leads you exactly where I want you to be. The game was in motion, and none of the players yet understood the true stakes. The fever that had gripped Jenny transformed the Dalton household in unexpected ways. For 3 days and nights, the sisters maintained their vigil, and the brothers found themselves drawn into the orbit of their fierce devotion. It was during those long hours that the walls between strangers began to crumble. Owen discovered it first when he brought a fresh basin of water to the sick room at midnight. Rosalind was alone with Jenny, sketching by lamplight, while her sister slept fitfully. But when he looked closer, he saw she wasn't drawing. She was writing, filling page after page with symbols and numbers in a pattern that made his scholar's mind itch with curiosity. It's a cipher, she said without looking up, sensing his interest. My mother's design. She was brilliant with patterns, quilts, codes, secrets hidden in plain sight. May I? Owen asked, gesturing to the chair beside her. Rosalind hesitated, then nodded. Together they sat in the soft circle of lamplight while she explained her mother's system, how each stitch pattern corresponded to a letter, how the colors indicated urgency, how the entire quilt was both a work of art and an encrypted testimony. She knew something would happen to Father, Rosalind whispered. She prepared for it, hid documents, created copies, built an entire network of evidence. But she died before she could tell us where. The quilt is the map, part of it. Rosalind's fingers traced a particularly complex pattern. But there's something else, something I haven't told Eleanor yet. She looked at him, and in her gentle eyes he saw a war between trust and fear. Mother's last message. She stitched it the night she died. Morning star rises where evening star fell. Trust the keeper of both. Owen's breath caught. The morning star mine. It's abandoned now, but my father worked there as a young man. He used to tell stories. Your father. Rosalind's hand found his unconsciously. He might have known. Before Owen could answer, Jenny's eyes flew open, unseeing but intense. The walls, she cried out. Papa's behind the walls. The morning star, the evening star, they're the same light. Eleanor rushed in, followed by the others. In the chaos of soothing Jenny back to sleep, Owen and Rosalind's moment was lost, but not the connection. They had a secret now, one that bound them together. Meanwhile, Finn found himself in an unexpected battle of wills with Isabel. She had taken over the kitchen with military precision, turning the brothers' haphazard food storage into an organized system that actually made sense. But she rebuffed every attempt at charm with a sharp word or sharper look. You know, Finn said, lounging against the doorframe as she kneaded bread with unnecessary violence, most women find me irresistible. Most women haven't had to survive on their wits while men like you played games. Isabel shot back. I've met a dozen versions of you, Mr. Dalton. Charming rogues who think a smile solves everything. And what's wrong with smiling? Nothing when it's honest. Everything when it's a mask. She turned to face him, flour dusting her cheeks. You want to know what I see when I look at you? A man so afraid of being taken seriously that he's made a joke of everything, including himself. The words hit harder than any punch Finn had ever taken. He straightened his easy grin, faltering. And you're so afraid of being vulnerable that you've made armor of your anger. They stared at each other, two people who had accidentally spoken truths they hadn't meant to reveal. Then Isabel turned back to her bread, but Finn caught the tremor in her hands. My father died believing I was a disappointment, Finn said quietly. Never said it, but I knew. Bo was the responsible one, Owen the smart one, Reese the good one. I was just the waste of potential. Isabel's kneading slowed. My father died in prison thinking I hated him. My last words to him were anger about how he'd failed us. I never got to tell him I understood that I knew he tried his best. Maybe, Finn said softly, that's why we're both so good at fighting. We're really just fighting ourselves. Isabel looked at him, then truly looked at him and saw past the gambler's swagger to the man beneath. Don't make me regret trusting you, Finn Dalton. Don't make me regret dropping my mask, Isabel Vance. A truce fragile as spring ice formed between them. For Reese and Jenny connection came through simplicity itself. As she recovered, too weak to do much, but sit in the kitchen while her sisters worked, Reese appointed himself her guardian. He read to her from his precious collection of dime novels, his voice animated as he acted out all the parts. You're different from your brothers, Jenny observed one afternoon watching him carefully water the struggling kitchen garden. How so? You still believe in happy endings. Reese looked at her, this girl barely older than himself who had already seen too much. Don't you? I used to. Before father was taken, before we lost everything, before... She trailed off, touching her throat where a thin scar was barely visible above her collar. Before Sterling, Reese guessed. Jenny's eyes widened in fear. How do you talk in your fever dreams? Not much, just enough. He knelt beside her chair, his earnest face serious. He hurt you. He tried to. Yanor stopped him. That's when we knew we had to run. Jenny's eyes filled with tears. She doesn't know I remember. She thinks I was too fevered, but I remember him holding me against the wall saying, if Eleanor didn't agree to marry him, she agreed. To save me, she agreed. And then we ran that very night. Reese's jaw clenched, a flash of the man he would become crossing his boyish features. He'll never touch you again. Any of you. I promise. Jenny smiled sadly. You can't promise that. He's rich, powerful. He has the law on his side. Maybe. But he doesn't have the land on his side. He doesn't have the mountains and the valleys and the people who know what justice really looks like out here. Reese took her hand carefully as if it might break. And he doesn't have 4 brothers who've already lost too much to let anything else be taken from them. That evening, as Jenny's fever finally broke completely and she slept peacefully for the first time, Bo made a decision. He gathered everyone in the main room, standing before the fireplace like a general before battle. If you're staying, he said, addressing the sisters but looking at Eleanor, then you're staying as family. That means we protect each other. It also means truth between us. He paused. This Sterling will come. Men like him always do. When he does, we face him together. Agreed. Agreed, the sisters said in unison. Then we need to be ready. Owen, ride to town tomorrow. Check the telegraph office, see if anyone's been asking questions. Finn, you still have friends among the less lawful elements. Finn grinned. A few. Put word out. We want to know if any Pinkertons or fancy Eastern men come sniffing around. Reese, you and the ladies will work on making this place look prosperous. A successful ranch is harder to challenge than a failing one. And you, Eleanor asked. I'm riding to the territorial capital. Judge Carter owes my father a favor. Time to collect. That night, Eleanor found herself unable to sleep again. She walked through the quiet house, noting the small changes already taking place. Isabel's order imposed on chaos. Rosalind's sketches pinned to the walls. Jenny's laugh echoing in the rafters. They were putting down roots, and that terrified her more than Sterling's pursuit. She found Bo on the porch, cleaning his rifle by moonlight. Can't sleep either, she asked. Preparing. Different thing. He glanced at her. You should tell them about the engagement. I can't. It would break their trust. Secrets are like infected wounds, Miss Vance. They fester until they poison everything around them. Eleanor sat beside him, pulling her shawl tight. Speaking from experience, my father knew something was wrong with those men claiming water rights. He tried to tell me, but I thought he was being paranoid. Kept it secret that I was meeting with them trying to negotiate peace. Bo's hands stilled on the rifle. The day he died, I was supposed to be with him riding the fence line. Instead, I was in town secretly meeting with his killers trying to broker a deal. They kept me talking while their partners shot him in the back. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? If I'd trusted him with the truth, if I'd told him my plans, he might have seen it coming. Bo looked at her. Secrets get people killed, Eleanor. The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her. Then I'll tell them, soon, when the time is right. The right time is usually before you think you're ready. They sat in comfortable silence, two people finding solace in shared burden. Then Bo asked, "The ring you sold in Denver, Sterling's." Eleanor's head snapped toward him. "How could you possibly—" "Telegram from a friend. Pawnbroker remembered a beautiful woman selling a ring worth more than his shop. Sterling traced it, didn't he? That's how he knows you're here." "Oh, God." Eleanor's face went white. "I led him right to us. To you." "Hey." Bo's hand covered hers, warm and calloused. "We'd have faced him anyway. At least now we know he's coming." 3 days later, their peaceful preparation was shattered. Owen returned from town at a gallop, his face grave. Behind him rode a stranger, a well-dressed man with the bearing of someone used to getting his way. "Mr. Davies," Owen announced as they dismounted, "from the Pinkerton Detective Agency." Davies was younger than expected, perhaps 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He removed his hat politely to the ladies, but kept his hand notably near his coat, where a shoulder holster would sit. "Mr. Dalton," he addressed Bo, "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Thaddeus Sterling of Boston. He has concerns about the welfare of his wards." "We're no one's wards," Isabel spat. "The court documents say otherwise, Miss Vance." Davies produced a leather folder. "Mr. Sterling has legal guardianship over all 4 Vance sisters until they reach majority or marry." "Jenny and I are of age," Eleanor said steadily. "But your sisters are not, and the guardianship extends to all 4 of you as a family unit given your father's circumstances." "You mean his murder by Sterling's conspiracy?" Rosalind asked quietly. Davies's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I mean his death in state prison while serving a sentence for fraud." "That's a lie," Jenny cried out, then swayed. Reese caught her, steadying her. "Easy," he murmured. "Don't give him the satisfaction." Davies watched this interaction with interest. "Mr. Sterling is prepared to be generous. He's willing to forgive all debts, provide comfortable accommodation in Boston, and ensure the sisters want for nothing." "In exchange for," Bo asked. "Their return to his protection, immediately. And if they refuse," Davies' smile was thin, "Mr. Sterling has purchased the mortgage on this ranch. He's also filed charges of kidnapping against all 4 Dalton brothers. He has considerable influence with the territorial governor." The silence was deafening. Then Finn laughed, a sound sharp as breaking glass. "Kidnapping, that's rich. 4 women traveled 2,000 miles of their own free will, and it's kidnapping. 4 vulnerable women lured by promises of marriage to a failing ranch held against their will." Davies shrugged. "Juries have believed stranger things." "Except we're not being held," Eleanor said, stepping forward. "We're here by choice." In fact, she took a breath, her decision made in an instant. "We're here as intended brides. The courtship is progressing naturally." "Is that so?" Davies' skepticism was plain. "And which brother is courting which sister?" Before anyone could speak, Bo moved to stand beside Eleanor. "Miss Eleanor has agreed to a courtship with me." Finn caught on quickly, moving to Isabel's side despite her startled look. "Miss Isabel and I have an understanding." Owen took Rosalind's hand. "As do we." Reese, blushing furiously, stood protectively near Jenny. "And Jenny and we're deeply attached." Jenny finished, her chin lifting with surprising strength. Davies studied them all, his expression unreadable. "How convenient. 4 brothers, 4 sisters, 4 sudden courtships, just as Mr. Sterling arrives to reclaim his wards." "Love works in mysterious ways," Finn said with his trademark grin, though his arm around Isabel's waist was protective rather than casual. "Indeed," Davies pulled out a notebook. "Then you won't mind if I verify this story, in town, with the locals, under oath if necessary." "Verify away," Bo said. "But know this, these women are under our protection now. Sterling can waive all the papers he wants, but out here possession is 9/10 of the law, and we possess the will to fight for what's ours." Davies actually smiled at that, a real smile. "You know, Mr. Dalton, I almost believe you." He replaced his hat. "I'll be staying in town for the next week conducting my investigation. I suggest you make your courtships very convincing. Mr. Sterling is not a patient man, and he has resources you can't imagine." As Davies rode away, the 8 of them remained frozen in their tableau of fake intimacy. It was Isabel who broke first, stepping away from Finn's arm. "Understanding, we have an understanding. Would you prefer barely contained passion?" Finn asked, his grin forced. "I'd prefer the truth." "The truth," Eleanor said quietly, "is that we just declared intentions in front of a witness. Those words have weight here. Legal weight. The implications settled over them like a heavy blanket. What had started as a desperate lie was becoming something more binding. "We could pretend," Jenny suggested weakly, "just until Sterling gives up." "Men like Sterling don't give up," Bo said. "They're beaten or they win. There's no middle ground." That night the house was full of whispered conferences. The sisters huddled in their room debating paths forward. The brothers sat around the kitchen table wrestling with the implications of their public declarations. But in the spaces between uncertainty, something else was growing. When Owen showed Rosalind his father's old journal from the Morning Star mine, her eyes lit up with possibility. When Finn taught Isabel to shoot, her fierce concentration made him forget to be charming. When Reese held Jenny as she cried from fear and frustration, his gentle strength surprised them both. And when Bo found Eleanor standing once again by his father's grave, this time openly weeping, he didn't hesitate to pull her into his arms. "I've ruined everything," she sobbed. "I've put you all in danger. Sterling will destroy you just to get to us." "Let him try," Bo murmured into her hair. "My father used to say that the land doesn't care about your past, only what you're willing to fight for. I'm willing to fight for this for you, all of you." Eleanor pulled back to look at him. "Why were strangers who brought trouble to your door?" "No," Bo said, his thumb wiping away her tears. "You're the women who made this house a home for the first time since my mother died. You're the ones who gave my brothers something to fight for besides survival. You're—" He paused, struggling with words that didn't come easily. "You're the answer to a prayer I didn't know I was praying." Their kiss was inevitable as sunrise, soft and desperate and full of promises neither was sure they could keep. Unknown to them, Davies watched from the hillside through field glasses. But instead of making notes, he lowered the glasses and frowned. His job was to retrieve the sisters, but something about this situation didn't sit right. Sterling's story had holes, and these people, they didn't act like criminals and victims. They acted like a family under siege. He pulled out a different notebook, one he used for personal observations, and wrote, "Investigate William Vance's trial records. Check prison death certificate. Something's not right." Meanwhile, in Rosalind's hidden sketches, the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. The Morning Star and Evening Star weren't different locations. They were the same celestial body, Venus, visible at different times. And her father's prison transfer records showed he had been moved to a facility near the Morning Star mine just before his supposed death. "Papa's alive," she whispered to the darkness, clutching Owen's father's journal. "He's alive, and he's been waiting for us to find him." The storm was coming, but it would bring revelations none of them expected. Part 3, Revelation and Redemption. The truth came to light on a Thursday morning when the sky was the color of old pewter and the air tasted of coming rain. Davies arrived at the ranch not with threats, but with a telegram that changed everything. "I need to speak with Miss Rosalind," he said, his usual composure cracked. "Alone." "Whatever you have to say," Bo began, but Rosalind stepped forward. "It's about my father, isn't it?" she asked quietly. "You found something." Davies nodded, his eyes reflecting a professional admiration. "Your coded messages in the quilt. I had them analyzed by our best cryptographer. They led me to investigate further." He pulled out a worn document. "This is a transfer order for prisoner William Vance, dated 1 week before his supposed death. He was moved to a private facility owned by Sterling Industries." The siblings gathered closer, tension, crackling like lightning before a strike. "He's alive," Rosalind breathed. "That's not all," Davies continued. "The facility is less than 50 miles from here, near the abandoned Morning Star mine. It's listed as a rehabilitation center for reformed criminals, but it only has one prisoner." Eleanor's legs gave out. Bo caught her, holding her steady as the world tilted on its axis. "8 months," she whispered. "8 months we've mourned him while he was—" Her voice hardened. "While Sterling kept him like a trophy." "We're going to get him," Bo said, his voice brooking no argument. "It's not that simple," Davies warned. "The facility is legal. The papers are in order. Sterling has done nothing technically criminal. In holding him there, your father was sentenced to life imprisonment. Sterling simply arranged for a private accommodation." "But the fraud charges were false," Owen interjected. "The real documents are hidden in the Morning Star mine," Rosalind finished. "Father's journal makes that clear. He hid them there during his transfer, knowing Mother would understand the clues." Davies stood, his decision made. "I was hired to find 4 missing women. I've found them. My contract is complete." He placed his badge on the table. "What happens next is nothing to do with the Pinkerton agency." "Why?" Isabel asked suspiciously. "Because I've spent 20 years tracking down criminals, Miss Vance. I know what they look like. And the only criminal I see in this situation is the man who hired me. He paused at the door. Sterling arrives tomorrow on the noon train. He's bringing lawyers and muscle. Whatever you're going to do it fast. The moment Davies left the ranch exploded into action. But it was Eleanor who took command, the broken woman of moments before replaced by someone forged in steel and desperate love. Owen, you and Rosalind take Beau's fastest horse to the mine. Find those documents. Finn, ride to town and gather every ally we have. Every rancher who respected Beau's father, every person Sterling has tried to buy or intimidate. Reese, you and Jenny prepare the house. If this becomes a siege, we need to be ready. And us, Beau asked, watching her transformation with something approaching awe. Eleanor's smile was sharp as a blade. We're going to get my father. The private facility was a gray stone building that squatted against the mountainside like a toad surrounded by high walls and iron gates. As Beau and Eleanor approached on horseback, her pressed against his back, he felt her trembling, not with fear, but with rage. Easy, he murmured. We do this smart. I was engaged to him, Eleanor said suddenly. Sterling, I need you to know that before we go in there, I agreed to marry him to save my father's business. I wore his ring. I let him, her voice broke. I let him think he owned me. Beau reined in the horse, turning to look at her. Did you love him? Never. I despised him even before I knew what he truly was, but I thought I had no choice. She met his eyes. I always had a choice. I was just too frightened to see it. And now I know that some things are worth the fear. She leaned forward and kissed him fierce and quick. Whatever happens in there, know that this us, it's not pretense anymore, at least not for me. Never was for me, Beau admitted. From the moment you stepped off that stage trying to hold the whole world together with your bare hands, I knew you were going to matter. They approached the facility openly, Beau using his father's name and reputation to gain entry. The guard, a local man, recognized him. Jim, Beau nodded. Heard you were working security these days. Mr. Dalton. Jim shifted uncomfortably. This is a restricted facility. I know. That's why we're here. Beau's voice was steady as granite. You know my father died 6 months back. You know he was an honest man. Ask yourself why a Boston millionaire needs a private prison in Montana with just one prisoner. Jim's eyes flicked to Eleanor, recognition dawning. You're her, the daughter. He talks about you sometimes, the old man. Says his girls will come. Is he? Eleanor couldn't finish. Alive. Thin, quiet, but alive. Jim looked over his shoulder. Sterling's men are in town, not here. Just me and 2 others on duty. Jim, Beau said quietly. You have a choice here. You can try to stop us, or you can decide you didn't see us. But either way, we're leaving with her father. Jim studied them for a long moment, then stepped aside. Building C, 3rd door. I'm going to check the perimeter. Takes about 20 minutes. They found William Vance in a clean but sparse cell, sitting at a small desk, writing with meticulous care in a journal. When he looked up and saw Eleanor, the pen fell from nerveless fingers. Ellie? His voice was a whisper aged beyond its years. My dear girl, you shouldn't be here. It's dangerous. Papa? Eleanor was in his arms before Beau could blink, sobbing like the child she'd never gotten to be. We thought you were dead. Sterling said you died. A fiction to keep you compliant, I imagine. William Vance was thin but unbowed, his eyes sharp despite his ordeal. Are your sisters safe? Yes, all of them. We ran, Papa. We ran so far. Good girl. He looked over her shoulder at Beau. And this is Beau Dalton, her... Eleanor hesitated, then lifted her chin, her intended. William's eyebrows rose. Well, that's unexpected. He studied Beau with an intensity that reminded him of Eleanor. You'll protect them. With my life, sir. Then we'd best hurry. Sterling may have made a mistake leaving me alive, but he's not fool enough to leave me unguarded for long. William grabbed his journal. I've documented everything. Every transaction, every forgery, every crime. 8 months of writing the truth. As they prepared to leave, William stopped at the door. Eleanor, there's something you should know. Your mother, she didn't die of grief. Sterling poisoned her, slowly, carefully making it look like illness. She knew at the end. That's why she worked so frantically on the quilt. She was trying to leave you the truth. Eleanor's face went white, then red, then deadly calm. Then Sterling dies today. No, William said firmly. He faces justice. Real justice. That's what your mother would want, his empire exposed, his crimes revealed. Death would be a mercy he doesn't deserve. They made it halfway to the horses before the shots rang out. Sterling stood at this gate with 6 hired guns, his face twisted with rage. Did you really think it would be that easy? Bo pushed Eleanor and her father behind a wagon drawing his gun, but they were outnumbered and outpositioned. It's over, Eleanor, Sterling called. You've had your rebellion. Now come home where you belong, all of you. I belong nowhere near you, Eleanor shouted back. You belong to me the moment you put on my ring. You belonged to me when you signed the engagement contract. Did you think I wouldn't plan for your betrayal? He held up a document. Legal marriage by proxy, filed the day you ran. You're my wife, Eleanor, and a wife's place is with her husband. The silence was deafening. Bo saw Eleanor's face crumble, saw the trap Sterling had laid months ago finally spring shut. But before anyone could move, the thunder of hooves filled the air. Finn rode in hard, leading what looked like half the town. Owen and Rosalind were there holding a leather satchel high. Jenny and Reese brought up the rear with Judge Carter himself. And beside them all, badge gleaming, despite his earlier words, rode Davies. Thaddeus Sterling, Davies called out, his voice carrying the authority of law. You're under arrest for fraud, false imprisonment, and murder. Sterling laughed. You have no authority here, Pinkerton. No, but I do. Judge Carter dismounted, his aged face stern. Mr. Davies came to me with some very interesting documents. Patents in William Vance's name that you claimed as your own. Transfer orders you forged, and a marriage certificate that's invalid as proxy marriages require consent of both parties, and Miss Vance clearly did not consent. You can't prove any of this, Sterling snarled. Actually, Rosalind, said her quiet voice carrying, we can. She opened the satchel, revealing not just documents but photographs, daguerreotypes of Sterling, meeting with the men who testified against their father, dated weeks before the supposed crimes. William Vance stepped forward, no longer the broken prisoner, but the inventor and businessman he had always been. Hello, Thaddeus. You always underestimated the importance of documentation. I taught you that. Appears you didn't learn well enough. Sterling's composure finally cracked. He pulled a gun, aiming it at Eleanor. If I can't have you... 3 shots rang out simultaneously. Sterling's gun flew from his hand as he fell. Bo, Finn, and surprisingly Isabel stood with smoking weapons. Nobody, Isabel said calmly, threatens my sister. As Sterling was arrested and his men scattered, the 8 members of the newly formed family stood in a circle processing what had just happened. William Vance looked at each of his daughters, then at the brothers who stood beside them. I appear to have missed quite a bit, he said dryly. Papa, Jenny said, tears streaming down her face. We're getting married. All of us. All at once? William's eyes twinkled despite everything. Seems efficient, Finn offered, earning an elbow from Isabel. 3 weeks later, after Sterling's very public trial and conviction, the Dalton Ranch hosted the wedding of the century, at least for Promise Creek. 4 brothers married 4 sisters in a ceremony that brought together the entire town. William Vance gave away each of his daughters, his health improving daily now that he was free. Davies attended, having resigned from the Pinkertons to become Promise Creek's new sheriff. Seems I've developed a taste for frontier justice, he explained. But the most beautiful moment came during the private family dinner afterward, when Bo stood to make a toast. To the women who answered an advertisement for mail-order brides and became so much more. To the sisters who taught us that family isn't just about blood, but about choice. To Eleanor, who showed me that trust isn't weakness, but the greatest strength. To Isabel, who proved that fire can warm as well as burn. To Rosalind, whose quiet wisdom solved the puzzle that saved us all. And to Jenny, whose pure heart reminded us what we were fighting for. He raised his glass higher. And to William Vance, who survived hell to see this day. Welcome to the family, sir. It's a bit unconventional, but it's ours. To family, everyone echoed. That night, as 4 couples began their married lives in the ranch that had grown to accommodate them all, Eleanor stood once more by Bo's father's grave, but this time she wasn't alone. Bo stood beside her, along with her father. I think he would have been proud, Bo said quietly. He would have been amazed, William corrected. But yes, proud. You've built something here that most men only dream of, a place where love and trust triumph over fear and greed. Eleanor leaned into Bo's warmth. We almost lost everything. But we didn't, Bo reminded her. And now we have everything. As they walked back to the house where lamplight spilled golden from the windows and laughter echoed across the valley, none of them saw the figure of Davies on the hill keeping watch. He'd made a promise to himself this family that had formed against all odds would never face danger alone again. The next morning brought a surprise that stunned even their eventful household. A lawyer from Denver arrived with documents that Sterling, in his arrogance, had never thought to hide. Not only were William's patents restored, but the profits Sterling had made from them, a fortune by any standard, were legally theirs. "We're rich," Rosalind said faintly, staring at the numbers. "We were already rich," Owen corrected, pulling her close. "Now we just have money too." The epilogue came 5 years later, when the Dalton Vance Ranch had become the most successful in 3 territories. 4 houses had been built on the property, one for each couple, arranged in a square around a common garden where all their children played together. William Vance's grandfather, to a growing brood, had built a workshop where he continued inventing his latest creation, being an improved windmill that was revolutionizing farming across the West. Jenny, fully recovered and glowing with health, had just given birth to twins whom Reese insisted on naming Hope and Faith because that's what brought us together. Isabel ran the ranch's business operations with an iron fist and a velvet glove, while Finn had become improbably the town's mayor. "Turns out charm is useful for something," he'd joke. Owen and Rosalind had opened a school where they taught not just letters and numbers, but art and music, bringing culture to the frontier. And Bo and Eleanor. They stood where they always did at sunset on the hill overlooking their empire, their 3 children playing at their feet. "Did you ever imagine," Eleanor asked, her head on his shoulder, "that a mail-order bride advertisement would lead to this? Not in my wildest dreams. I wasn't supposed to be here, remember? You never sent that letter." Bo smiled, pulling her closer. "Maybe not, but you were always meant to be here. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never ordered." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, the Dalton Vance family gathered for their nightly tradition dinner together. All 12 of them, plus William and occasionally Davies, around a table that had grown longer each year. They had started as strangers bound by desperation and lies. They had become a family forged in truth and tested by fire. And in the end, they had proved that love, real love, could conquer anything, even the ghosts of the past and the threats of powerful men. The mail-order bride scheme had been a gamble, a desperate throw of dice by lonely men and frightened women. But sometimes, just sometimes, when you gamble everything on hope, you win more than you ever dared dream. And in the vast, untamed heart of Montana, where the mountains touched the sky and the land stretched endless and free, 4 brothers and 4 sisters had built not just a ranch, but a dynasty, a testament to the power of family, the strength of love, and the courage to trust when everything in your past tells you not to. Their story became legend in the territory, told around campfires and in saloons, growing with each telling. But the truth is, those who lived it knew was both simpler and more profound. Sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. And sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with passion, but with 2 desperate people deciding to trust each other with their broken pieces. The Dalton Vance legacy would continue for generations, their descendants spreading across the West, each carrying the story of 4 mail-order brides who weren't supposed to be there, and 4 brothers who took a chance on strangers. But more than that, they carried the truth that love isn't about perfect circumstances or fairy tale meetings. It's about choosing to stand together when the world tries to tear you apart. And in Promise Creek, Montana, where the dust still rises like prayers and the mountains stand eternal watch, if you know where to look, you can still see the original ranch house. It's a museum now, filled with Rosalind's art and William's inventions, Jenny's gardens still blooming, and Isabel's meticulous records of a family that shouldn't have worked but did. They say if you visit at sunset when the light is just right, you can almost hear them. The laughter of children, the murmur of lovers, the sound of a family that defied odds, defeated evil, and proved that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest words, "Welcome home."